All right, we had completed a witness yesterday afternoon. I think we're turning to a new witness this morning, Mr. Hagan.
Yes, Your Honor. The Commonwealth calls Thomas Murphy.
Stop your face, clerk.
You solemnly swear that testimony you shall give this court and jury, the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, help you God? I do. Thank you, sir. Can I call the officer?
Watch WMC.
May I inquire?
Please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Thomas Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y.
How are you currently employed, sir?
I'm a criminalist for the Tucson, Arizona Police Department
How long have you been a criminalist for the Tucson, Arizona Police Department?
since June of 2016.
Calling your attention, prior to this past June 2016, what was your employment prior to that, sir?
I was a lieutenant on the Massachusetts State Police,
How many years total were you with the Massachusetts State Police, sir?
24.
And during that 24 years, if you would, can you summarize for us any areas or units you were assigned to?
Excuse me. I was assigned to patrol. I was in a gang unit for a while, and I spent 8 years working in the firearms identification section.
And that's 8 years total in firearms identification?
Yes,
And in 2016, did you in fact retire from the Massachusetts State Police, and now you're living in Arizona?
that's correct.
Calling your attention now, sir, to your time in the firearms identification section or unit of the Massachusetts State Police. You were there for 8 years. Can you describe for the jurors and the court what specialized training you had in the area of tool marks and firearms?
Yes, the initial training is an apprenticeship where you work with other senior examiners, learning the procedures of doing functionality testing and using a comparison microscope to look at cartridge casings and projectiles to compare them to each other and to compare them to evidence to determine whether they've been fired from a particular weapon or not fired from that weapon. In addition to that training, I attended schools sponsored by numerous firearms manufacturers where I took armorers courses to learn about the manufacturing process, how the guns were assembled, how tool marks were imparted onto the guns in the manufacturing process. I went on factory tours. I've also been a member of the Association of Firearm and Tool Mark Examiners for over 10 years, where I attend conferences where we discuss new development and interesting cases.
And you're currently a member, you said, of AFTE, right? The Association of Firearms Examiners?
Yes.
And your current status, you are, again, employed by Tucson, Arizona. Both your time in Tucson in the past year and in your time with the Massachusetts State Police Firearms Analysis Section, did you undergo proficiency training?
I did.
And did you pass your proficiency test?
Yes.
Additionally, sir, did you ever participate in what are called barrel studies?
I have.
What are the barrel studies that you participated in, and what were the results?
I participated in a couple of different barrel studies.
Grounds?
Nothing discovered against participation in the actual barrel study of the line.
I'll move on, Your Honor, for purposes of testimony. And sir, is it fair to state that in the course of your almost 9-year career now in firearms analysis, you've given testimony, what's oftentimes referred to as opinion or expert testimony in the area of firearms as well as tool marks?
Yes, I have.
Now, sir, I'm going to call your attention to a particular case and some work you did on a particular case. I'm calling your attention now to the year 2013. In June of 2013, were you a member of the Firearms Analysis Section of the Massachusetts State Police at that time?
I was.
I'm calling your attention to June 27th, 2013, where was a certain item delivered to you on June 27, 2013, specifically a firearm and 3 live cartridges.
Yes.
I'm just placing on the screen, sir, and let me know if you see that in front of you, what's been entered as Exhibit 212C. Do you recognize that item, sir?
I do.
And was that the item that was delivered to you for testing after it was sent from the latent print unit on June 27, 2013?
Yes.
Approach witness, Your Honor.
You may.
Just for purpose of clarification, sir, I'm showing you what's been entered as Exhibit 206. Do you recognize that item, sir?
I do.
And is that the item that was delivered to you on June 27, 2013 for testing?
Yes.
But Mr. Murphy, when this item was delivered to you and you began to conduct some testing on it, did you wear any protective gear on your hands, meaning latex gloves or anything like that, to prevent DNA?
No, when I do my testing, I don't wear gloves.
You never wear gloves.
No.
So did you ultimately test fire this weapon, sir?
I did.
And you did not wear gloves when you test fired it?
I did not.
And it sounds pretty simple, but how did you test fire? What did you do exactly?
I did a couple of different things. With this particular revolver, I took one of the live cartridges that was submitted with it, and I test fired it to test it for functionality, and then later on I made some other test fires with it.
Tell us how you did the test for functionality, and actually I'll back up a moment. When you say test for functionality, were you testing to see whether or not the firearm was a working firearm pursuant to the statute?
Yes.
And what's required to prove that, sir, at least what you were trying to do in test firing?
I would catalog the weapon, note the manufacturer, the model, the serial number, link to the barrel, note any safeties if there are any in the weapon if they're working, the amount of force required to shoot the gun using a trigger pull measurer, and I would look at the ammunition to determine excuse me, if it appeared to be functional, and then I would take one of those rounds and go into the shooting room and use a casing to fire it.
And I'll get into how you did the casing to fire in one moment, but as far as using one of the actual rounds, why did you use one of the rounds that was submitted in evidence, or in other words, did that have any significance for you as far as what you needed to determine?
Yes, to determine that it is in fact live ammunition.
So you took one of the 3 rounds that I've zoomed in on here on Exhibit 212C, is that correct?
Yes.
And describe, I think you started to describe, how did you do that test fire, or to test that ammunition? Did you fire the entire cartridge, or did you disassemble it in some way?
No, this in this case would be disassembled. We use what's called a bullet puller. It looks like a hammer, where you can load the live cartridge into it, and you strike it on a sharp surface, and the projectile and the powder will drop out, leaving you with a casing that still has the primer in it. And you can test a weapon using just a prime case.
And when you tested this weapon with just the primer case of one of the cartridges that we see here on the exhibit, what was the result of that test, sir?
It fired without malfunction.
And based upon both the weapon firing without a malfunction and the, at least part of the cartridge casing discharging a spark or igniting, did you form an opinion to a reasonable degree of ballistic certainty as to whether or not that was a firearm and whether or not the cartridges that were submitted with it were ammunition?
Yes, I formed the opinion that it was a functional firearm and live ammunition.
And again, during the entire processing, Mr. Murphy, you did not wear any latex gloves, correct?
No.
So I'm going to show you first an envelope that has been introduced as Exhibit 226. Do you recognize the handwriting on that envelope, sir?
Yes, that's my handwriting.
I'm just opening up the envelope and taking out its contents. Can you tell us what that item is, sir?
That is the casing that was to test fire.
And that was test fired by you?
Yes.
Now, sir, after you finished your processing of the firearm and the 3, or at least one of the live cartridges, did you then submit the item back into storage or evidence management of the state police?
Yes, when my examination was done, I put it back into evidence.
And I'm calling your attention now to a later date in July of 2013. Did you receive some information that caused you to perform some additional work with that in regards to that firearm?
Yes.
And based upon the information you received, sir, did you conduct additional test fires of that weapon that's been introduced in evidence and that is pictured in Exhibit 212C?
Yes, I did.
What did you do exactly?
I fired 6 more live rounds this time with projectiles.
And as far as the type of ammunition you used, did you use stock ammunition, or what did you use?
Yes, I used the ammunition from the stock of the ballistic section in Springfield.
And you test fired 6 rounds, is that correct?
I did.
And did you package the 6 rounds and the casings as well for shipping to a certain police agency?
Yes,
And what police agency was that?
Boston Police Department.
I'm placing on the screen, Mr. Murphy, what's been entered as Exhibit 225. Do you recognize any of the handwriting on this?
Yes, that's my handwriting.
Okay, and is this the plastic bag in which you placed the 6 test fires as well as the cartridge casings that went with those test fires that was ultimately sent to the Boston Police in July of 2013?
Yes.
Have a moment. Sir, I'm just placing on the screen Exhibit 226 again. That's your handwriting?
It is.
And the serial number that you marked down was what, sir?
That's the serial number of the Smith & Wesson revolver.
And what does it say?
212682.
And sir, just showing you again what's been entered as Exhibit 206. Can you tell what the serial number is on the gun itself?
Yes, 212682.
And sir, what's been entered as Exhibit 225. The envelope, is that your handwriting as well?
It is.
And the serial number here is listed as 212632. Is that just a typographical error by you, sir?
Yes.
But that's the same firearm that's 212682.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Ms. Kenny Day.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Detective Murphy.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I'd like to go over the timing of the testing one more time if we could, so we can understand the sequence. So Detective Sergeant Stephen Lord has already testified in this court, had the gun on June 27, 2013 to take fingerprints off it, correct?
Yes.
And then you got the gun on July 1st, 2013, correct?
Correct.
And then you did the first test fire on July 1st, 2013, correct?
Correct.
Right. And then when was the second test fire of the 6 cartridges?
I believe it was later on that we learned that we needed to make test fires for the Boston Police Department.
I'm looking for the date, sir.
I don't know.
Do you have any records about the date of the test fire?
I don't have any records of the day I did the test firing, no.
Okay. But in any event, you did it because of information from the Boston Police Department?
It came, I didn't speak directly with the Boston Police Department, but a request came to provide test fires.
Okay. But you don't know that date?
I do not know that date.
But it was before the firearm, the gun was transferred to the Boston Police Department, correct?
Yes.
And that would, do you know what date that was?
The gun went back to Springfield Barracks, I believe, on the 2nd of July. So sometime after the 2nd of July, maybe. I'm not sure of the date.
Okay, so is your second testing after the 2nd of July also?
I can't remember.
Okay, so your first testing is July 1st. That's definite.
That's definite.
Your second testing could have been July 2nd. It could have been sometime later.
It could have been.
Okay, and we don't know because there's no records on that?
I don't have a record of it, no.
Okay, all right, I'm trying to clear that up. Now, when you tested that gun after Detective Lord had found friction-ridge details on both the gun and the cartridges, did you know which cartridge friction-ridge detail had been found on?
No.
Did anyone advise you of that?
I don't think so, no.
Did anyone advise you that there may be later DNA testing on the gun and the cartridges?
No.
If you had been known that, you would have worn gloves, correct?
If I had known there had been a DNA, the gun wouldn't have come to me had it already not been through DNA.
Okay, so in the state police, the gun should have gone through DNA if there was a DNA request.
If there was a DNA request, it would have been done before I did any work on the gun.
And you did not know at that time, no one told you, Detective Murphy, please wear guns because DNA on this gun may be important later on.
No.
Okay. As a matter of fact, you tested the gun on July 1st, 2013, and you were aware then, or were you not, that on that same day the Boston Police Department was doing a criminalistics evidence gathering procedures on a Toyota that had been seized on June 26, 2013.
I'm not aware of that.
Okay. So even though you were working with or had communications with the Boston Police Department, no one told you that indeed on that same day that you were test firing the gun without gloves, that criminalistics was trying to get evidence, trace evidence or other evidence from a Toyota that was linked to Aaron Hernandez.
I was not aware of any of that.
And no one told you that on June 26, 2013, which was prior to the fingerprinting of Mr. Lord and prior to your test firing 2 times, that Mr. Hernandez's Toyota had been taken into custody.
I didn't know anything about that.
Okay, and I gather that when you did the second test firing, whether it's July 2nd or later in July, no one told you that indeed this gun may be important to make a determination as to who had owned or held the gun.
I knew I was making test fires because the gun may have been involved in a homicide, but as far as other testing that needed to be done, I was not made aware of any of that.
So at the time you did the test fires, you knew the gun had been involved in a homicide?
It was suspected to have been involved in a homicide, yes.
Okay. Or you thought it was suspected. In other words, you're doing test fires as part of the procedures in the state police to see if the gun is operable in the first place.
That's correct.
Okay. And so even with that knowledge, nothing came to you that the DNA on that gun could be important?
No.
Nothing came to you that preserving the friction ridge detail on that gun may be important for others to look at later to see if they agreed with Detective Lord's examination?
No.
Excuse me one second. And Detective Lord, I have one final question then. Then nothing you did connects that gun or those cartridges to Mr. Aaron Hernandez?
I did a functionality test and I provided test fires to the Boston Police Department. Beyond that, I don't know.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Only one question, Your Honor. Sir, just in response to one of Ms. Kenny Bowden's questions, the second test fire you did in July, you didn't wear latex gloves for that either?
No.
No further questions.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Step down. Watch your step, please. Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth calls Matthew Kelch.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury in the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Yes, I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Would you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury and spell both your first and last name, if you would?
Yes, I will. It's a little different. It's Matthew Kelsch, but it's M-A-T-T-H-E-U, and Kelsch is K-E-L-S-C-H.
What is your current occupation, sir?
I'm employed as a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or more commonly called ATF.
And how long have you been with ATF, sir?
I've been with ATF for approximately 16 years.
During that 16-year career with ATF, Mr. Kelch, can you describe what areas or units you've been assigned to, or locations?
Yes, just in brief, the first 8 or so years I specialized in arson and explosive investigations. And after that time, I moved to firearms investigations in the city of Boston. Those are my main duties, but ATF agents also carry a number of collateral duties as well.
And do any of those collateral duties involve cell phone extractions?
Yes, they do.
And at some point in the course of your 16-year career with ATF, did you become involved in being trained as a digital forensic analyst?
Yes, in 2012 I began that process.
And describe, if you would, what training you received and any certifications or accreditations you received relative to that field, sir.
Yes, ATF offers a one-week course for what they would call them digital media collection specialists. So those agents are given specific training and tools to allow them to do extractions of forensic extractions of cellular phone devices, other types of storage media, and also to copy hard drives. We have a digital investigator which does the more in-depth investigations of computers and whatnot. Aside from that training, I've gone through Celebrate training. Celebrate is one of the main companies that produces forensic tools to allow users to extract data from cell phones. They have a four-part process. And you work from the bottom and move up, and at the end of that you attain a certification through Celebrate. I'm happy to explain the details if you want on that.
As far as getting the certification, what's required to get the certification from Celebrate?
So for Celebrate, the first certification is merely a test where you're asked the basic fundamentals of cell phone and cell phone examinations. Once you pass that, you have to take two actual courses. The first is a 2-day course called Logical Operator course. Once you take that 2-day course, you're again required to take a examination. If you pass that examination, you're given that certification. The follow-up to that is something they call their Physical Analyst course. That's a 3-day course, and upon the completion of that course, you have to take another tested examination, timed tested examination. Once you pass that course, you're given that certification, and the final certification is called their Certified Cellular Mobile Examiner. And that involves both a time test and some practical studies that Celebrate sends to you. And what you basically do is it's almost like you're analyzing phones, but it's information that Celebrate gives you, and they test you on that, and they ask you specific questions. So it's almost like you're analyzing phones. You follow along, and they'll ask you specific questions to see if you can find that data and work through it properly. Once you've passed that test and the practicals, you're given their mobile examiner certification, which is the highest certification that they offer.
So that's basically what you described as almost like a proficiency test, a test case, and they see if you get the right answer.
Yeah, there's actually 3 test cases, but yes.
And just to go through what I think you've already summarized, so was it in 2015 you became a certified mobile forensic, Celebrate forensic certification, correct? 2015?
Yes.
And in 2015 you also became a Celebrate certified logical operator?
Yes.
And what does that mean? I don't think you talked about that.
So there's, when we talk about phone examinations, there's different levels of examinations. There's a logical, a file system, and a physical, and they're a little confusing, so I'll try to just explain it in layman's terms. A logical examination is where the software, so in this case the Celebrate software, kind of has a conversation with the phone, and it asks the phone to provide certain information to the user. So it's kind of like a nice talk back and forth, where it asks maybe a phone for its text messages, and the phone provides its text messages back to the software where we can look at them. The step up from that is a file system, and that's where the software, in this case Celebrate, goes through and actually pulls the entire file system off the phone. So if you think about when you go on your computer and you go into Windows and you click through all your different folders where you save your songs or your documents, it's basically taking all those documents, all those folders, and putting it in a place where we can look at it and use it. The last certification, which is the Physical Analyst, is the process where the software actually goes onto the phone and it just rips that information off and copies it. So it's not really talking to or being nice with the phone anymore. It's saying, I want an exact copy of everything you have on that phone. And that's what we call when we say it's a physical as opposed to logical. And those are the 2 classes they teach.
And sir, I think you may have already touched upon this, but you're certified in all 3 of those methods with Celebrate. In other words, the logical, which gets you the least amount of information, the file system, which is somewhere in between, and then the most expansive extraction of information being the physical. You're certified in all 3.
Exactly, and that's a fair explanation of the 3, yes.
And Mr. Kelch, is it fair to state that at times in your career, particularly your work now as a forensic analyst of cellular telephones, you've been allowed to provide what's oftentimes referred to as opinion or expert testimony in courts, both in the Commonwealth and in federal court?
I have, yes.
So I'm going to call your attention now to work that you performed relative to this case. I'm calling your attention now to this past October 2016. Was a certain cellular telephone submitted to you for possible examination?
Yes, it was.
May I approach the witness, Ron?
You may.
Kelch, I'm going to show you the contents of the bag. First, ask you if you recognize the exterior of the bag.
Yes, I do.
And does that appear to be a bag that contained an item submitted to you in October of 2016?
Yes, it does.
And the contents of the bag, sir, I see numerous packaging materials as well as ultimately what appears to be an evidence bag with a certain item inside. And there appears to also be a charging cord of some sort. Can you just explain what all these items are?
Sure. The easiest first, there was just a cell phone charging cord in the unit, the USB cord.
Did that come with the item, sir, or did you?
I don't know where this came from, but it was in the evidence envelope when I received it. There appears to be a replacement screen for the phone that was in the bag. Once again, I don't know where this item came from, but it was in the evidence bag when I received it. And lastly, we have a phone itself. Would you like me to
Yes, please.
remove this? We have a phone itself that I received. It did not have the back cover to it, but there was a phone and a battery. And looking at it, although it's hard to read because it's small, but it's a BlackBerry model Z10 phone.
And do you have an IMEI number that you can read from that phone, or is it too small?
I can certainly try. It is rather small, though.
Well, let me ask you this. Ultimately, in the extraction that you did, were you able to obtain the IMEI number?
Yes, I actually, in my lab, I was able to photograph the number and blow it up and see it much easier and put that in my report. And I did obtain that during the extraction as well.
And do you recall, off the top of your head, what the IMEI number is? Obviously not.
I don't off the top of my head. It is documented on my report, though.
And the report would refresh your memory as to the IMEI number, sir?
It would, yes.
May I approach witness, sir?
You may.
And does that refresh your memory as to the IMEI number of that phone?
Yes, it does.
And what is that number?
So that number would be 362-922-050-372-563.
And I've just placed a page from Exhibit 249F on the screen with the, other than some extra numbers on the end. Does that appear to be the IMEI number listed on this document?
I believe I said 362 to start.
So this device that you've just held up and read off some information about, sir, again, is that an item that was submitted to you in October of 2016?
Yes, October 12th, 2016.
You're asked that the contents of the bag, and in particular the cellular telephone testified to by Mr. Kelch, be entered and marked as an X numbered exhibit.
Sir, objection.
Without objection.
Is that 250? 250.
Now, Agent Kelch, when you attempted to examine this cellular telephone, did you make note of whether or not the phone had what's called a SIM card or an SD card?
Yes, I did.
And what was your determination as to whether or not this phone had a SIM card or an SD card?
The phone had both a slot to accept an SD and a SIM card, but neither were there.
And can you describe for ladies and gentlemen of the jury first of all, what an SD card is?
So SD card SD stands for Secure Digital, and basically it's just a memory card that can save any number of types of data. Commonly on phones it would be photos, videos, downloaded items and whatnot.
And is an SD card somewhat optional? In other words, some phones may come with it, some may not. Some people may use SD cards, some may not. Is that fair?
That is fair, yes.
Now, relative to a SIM card, describe, if you would, what a SIM card is.
So the SIM card is the subscriber identity module, and that's the actual card that you place in the phone to make that phone operate and talk with the network.
Is a SIM card required, or is it necessary to be able to use a phone?
Not in all phones, but in this particular carrier phone, yes it is.
So without a SIM card, the phone cannot be used to connect to the internet? Is that correct?
The phone could still connect to the internet via Wi-Fi, but it would not be able to connect through the network to make phone calls, receive texts, or to browse any sort of internet without it.
And is there any particular data that would be contained on a SIM card, at least from your training experience?
So the SIM card has a unique number that identifies that SIM card, but that SIM card will also tell you the telephone number that was used to reach that particular phone.
So in this particular case, with no SIM card, were you able to determine the telephone number to that phone?
No, I was not.
Now, I think you already testified to this. This was a BlackBerry phone, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
What, if any, challenges in your line of work do BlackBerries pose for potential extraction, generally speaking?
Sure. BlackBerry, in my line of work with the number of phones I see, is not one of the more popular phones. So the companies such as Celebrite don't always have as many resources put into that type of phone. So when we go to extract from some of these phones, they may not get us as much data as we would on some of the more popular phones, like an Android phone or an iPhone.
And call your attention now sort of the three different types of downloads that you indicated that you may be able to successfully complete with the Celebrate software. Again, the most simple being logical, middle being file, and the more extensive or all-inclusive being the physical. Did you attempt to do, or did you try to do all three, or the highest level physical?
So this particular phone model, when we look at Celebrate, is only supported for two types of downloads, for the logical and for the file system. It's not supported for a physical extraction by the
So
company.
it was impossible, at least as far as your training experience, to do a physical extraction on the phone?
Yes, at this time there is no software that allows that.
Now, you mentioned file extraction, which is, as you described previously, kind of the middle version of the three that you could do. Were you able to do a file extraction on this phone?
No, I was not able to do a file system extraction. On a BlackBerry in particular, you need to have both the BlackBerry user login and the password to place in the phone to do that. So if I was to attempt to do the file system extraction, the software would prompt me to put in the BlackBerry password, which I did not have, so I was unable to complete that portion.
Were you successful, Agent Kelch, in at least being able to do what you described as a logical extraction using the Celebrate software on that cellular phone?
Yes, I was.
And describe generally what type of information you were able to download relative to the logical extraction.
Yeah, normally on a logical extraction, we'll receive contacts, call logs, texts, multimedia texts, chat, emails, and images and videos.
And were you in fact able to, on this particular phone, obtain all of those items?
I was able to obtain everything I just mentioned, aside from the call logs, and some of the videos and photos did not extract.
And when you say they don't extract, does that mean they're not basically included as part of the software for Celebrate? They're not printed out in the final Celebrate report?
Right, so whoever at Celebrite wrote the coding to extract that information from the phone, for whatever reason, it could have been a coding issue or could have been an issue with the phone. They were unable to get the software to talk to the phone to remove the call logs and to remove the photos that were saved on there. So there was actually no forensic means through Celebrate to remove those particular items. They're still on the phone, you can look at them, that software just won't remove them.
And ultimately, did you look at some of the items as far as call logs, and we'll get into in a moment photographs, but we were able to physically look at them and at least document them in some manner by photographs or some other means?
Yes, so we do have a method whereas if you can't forensically extract it, we can obviously look at the screen itself, we can take a camera, place that on the screen, and take a manual photograph of it.
Agent Kelch, as far as the information that you were unable to obtain from that device, it's just been entered as a last exhibit, were you able to obtain deleted files?
I was not, no.
And if you were able to do a physical extraction, would you have been able to find deleted files?
During physical extraction, most times we are able to retrieve deleted items, yes.
And what about information such as internet browsing history on the phone? Were you able to obtain that data from the device?
No, I was not.
And would you have possibly been able to do that if the phone had supported a physical extraction?
Yes, that could have been possible.
And as far as use of apps and that type of data, were you able to extract that from the device?
No, I could not extract any app data usage.
May I approach the witness, sir?
You may.
Agent Kelch, I'm first showing you a green thumb drive. I'd ask if you had the opportunity to view the contents of that green thumb drive prior to testifying here today.
Yes, I have.
And what are the contents of that green thumb drive, sir?
So upon the completion of my examination, I saved a number of items. There would be the examination photos, so the photos I took of the device during my exam. The actual forensic downloads or extractions. So the information that Celebrate used is saved into files. That would be on here, as well as reports that Celebrate produces afterwards. So we take all that data and we have to process it and put into some sort of report where we can read it. So those reports are also saved on here.
So this is the entirety of at least the initial download that you did, the Celebrate download of the phone that was just entered as the last numbered exhibit. This is the initial. This is all the information you obtained from the Celebrate report. Is that correct?
Yes, everything I did in October 2016 would be on that.
You are for the thumb drive, but only for identification.
Without objection.
All right, that'll be received for identification.
Agent Kelch, I'm now showing you a binder that can. I'm sorry. I'll set these. I'm now showing you a binder that contains 448 pages. Do you recognize that large document, sir?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
So this is a printed out version of the Celebrate report that was produced from the logical extraction that I conducted.
So it's a physical copy, so to speak, of what's just been marked for identification. Is that correct, sir?
Yes.
At this time, I would move to introduce the binder of the full logical extraction for the cellular telephone as the next numbered exhibit, subject to redaction by both parties, Your Honor.
Subject to redaction, no objections.
All right, Exhibit 251.
So were you able to determine from this report, Exhibit 251, what the time frame is for this device? In other words, what data you were able to extract as far as when the data started and when the data ended?
Yes, I can.
And tell us what that is, sir.
I've just taken a minute to look
Sure.
through it. Do you mind? So the system itself produces a timeline that takes all the data and produces with a timestamp. And here I see a starting timestamp of February 26th of 2013. And the last timestamp would be June 9th of 2013.
So based upon your logical extraction download, so to speak, of the device, you have no information of that device being used other than between that time period of February 26, 2013 until June 9th, 2013, is that correct?
No, that's correct.
Mr. Kelch, as far as, or Agent Kelch, I'm sorry, as far as the breakdown of Exhibit 251, I'm just going to place on the screen page 3 of that exhibit. Is that kind of the summary portion of the Celebrate report, sir?
Yes, it is.
I'm just going to, again, page 3 of Exhibit 251. Can you just go down and tell us what all of this means?
Sure. So this is labeling the major categories of information that was taken from the phone. So for example, if we start on the top left where it says contacts, there were 246 contacts contained on the phone. And if you went to that contacts portion, it would list out all 246. We follow down with emails with 168, locations with 5.
What does locations mean?
If there were any locations tagged with the phone, for example, if there's a photograph that had a location tag with it, it would be included in that area.
MMS messages and SMS messages, sir?
Sure. So MMS message can be one of two types of messages. They're either messages that have an attachment. So if you sent a photograph to someone, it would be considered MMS. Or if you sent out a text message that had multiple people on it, so you send out a group text, it would be filed as an MMS message.
And this indicates that you were able to download
139 of the MMS.
139 of the MMS.
Yes.
And the SMS, how many of those did you were able to?
Yes. So the SMS would just be your regular text message. That would be 3,271.
And the timeline, what is that, sir?
So what the timeline does, it takes all those, it takes the emails and both types of messages and puts them in a chronological timeline where you could follow through.
Data files?
So data files are just your basic files that you would have, usually lists videos, images, documents, and so here we have 114 images that were on this part of the extraction.
And what about texts but under data files? What is that?
That would probably most likely be documents that have some sort of text in them.
Camera evidence, which is listed as included in the report 108.
Camera evidence would have been the 108 photos that I manually took of the phone, and they're included in the report.
And the analytic or activity analytics, is that something we don't need to worry about?
So basically, the Celebrite software does some analytics where it will just basically tell you call frequency of numbers and whatnot. So they're just different types of things you can look at that included in the report.
And is that similar to the next two entries, analytics emails, analytics phones?
Yes.
Now, as far as the first category of contacts on Exhibit 251, I'm just going to go to a random page, page 4. Can you just assist us in understanding what this means here as far as name? Is that something that's input by the user, or is that somehow done by the phone or the computer?
No, so name would be whatever the user input for that particular phone number that you see in the column to the right.
And the phone number, would that be something that would be input presumably by the user or the person entering in the phone, or is that something that comes from somewhere else?
No, once again, that would be from the user.
Now, Agent Kelch, as far as both MMSs, which you've described, are basically text messages to more than one person or text with an attachment, correct?
Yes.
Or SMSs, which are standard text messages between just two people, one person to another. I'm going to place on the screen just a random page. just any of these pages that have an attachment. Are these examples of MMSs?
Yes, they are. So these are actually the showing the information, who it was from. If there was a contact name entered in the phone, it would list it on there. So if we look at entry number 63, for example, that particular phone number was entered in there as the contact beam. It has a time and date stamp on there. Where you see it says UTC -4, it's basically adjusting the time for a time zone. So it's taking standard time and subtracting 4 hours.
So let me ask you about that, because I think this issue came to the jury yesterday. So the times that we see on these records, will these be Eastern Standard Time, or do we have to do some type of calculus to get it into?
No, these should be in Eastern Standard Time.
So the computer itself has already done the math and subtracted 4, and that's what's meant by the UTC -4.
That's correct, yes.
So any times or dates listed in this report would be Eastern Standard Time?
It should be, yes.
And that was an example of an MMS, just going to a random page, which for the record is page 158.
Objection.
Grounds?
Approach.
Entry numbers as far as which text message we're on.
Yes.
So just for instance, this one here, we're on text number 20.
Mm-hmm.
And what does send box mean?
So the first column would tell you whether it was a sent or received message. So in this case, it was sent to someone, so that's the number that the text message was sent to, and if there was a contact name associated with that, that's listed underneath.
So that would be a contact name presumably issued by or input by the user of the phone, so that con is not something the computer did.
That's correct. That was user entered.
And this would mean what, sir, this column?
That is your date and timestamp?
And again, that's correct. It's already been modified for UTC.
Yes.
And the next column?
So in this column, it would tell you if it was read, if it was an incoming, or if it was sent. If it's sent, it's always going to be sent. If it was an incoming, sometimes we do have instances where we may have text messages that were unread. But here, this is a sent message, so it lists sent.
And up above, we see one that says read.
Yes.
What does that mean then?
So that means that that text message was actually read by a user. If it had been unread, it would list unread.
Agent Kelch, towards the end of the lengthy 400-plus page report, is there something that's called the timeline?
There is, yes.
And what is that exactly?
So that timeline basically takes all that information that we talked about before, the text messages, the emails, and whatever other data that's been taken off, and it takes it by timestamp and it puts it in a chronological order.
And just to pick a random example of an email, if I may. Just going to place a random page 227. Does that include an example from the timeline of an email?
Yes, so in the first column, 848, that's just the column number. It shows that it was an email, that it was an incoming email. You once again have your date and timestamp, who that email is from, and then you have the actual text of the email. But in this case, if you go down the bottom, it says the file was too long, so it's been truncated. So if we were in the actual report on a computer and we clicked on that, it would open up the rest of the body of the email.
So on what's been entered for identification, the green thumb drive, if one needed to, one could click on that and get the full email. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Hagan, we're going to take a brief recess.